Modern science looks for the origins of religion in our uniquely human brains, which developed through the process of evolution. As the brains of hominids grew in size and complexity, the ability to think and communicate with sophisticated symbol systems allowed humans and our earlier ancestors to think about the world and ourselves in a profoundly different manner. Religion appears to have arisen in response to that ability. As far as we can tell, religiosity is not a characteristic found in other animals. Since our brains are the physical organ that most sets humans apart, it is reasonable to assume our distinctive brains are responsible for our religiousness. Specifically, our brains have an enlarged prefrontal cortex that is 2 to 3 times larger, relative to other brain structures, than would be expected in a primate brain such as our own. Unsurprisingly, the forebrain is also the section responsible for making associations between things, creating symbols, thinking abstractly, and using symbol systems like language. As a highly symbolic and abstract activity, religion is a product of our prefrontal cortex. To receive that brain, humans are the result of over 4 million years of evolutionary history, dating back to our earliest known ancestor, Ardipithecus ramidus, a primate who lived on the savannas of Africa and could walk upright. Over those 4 million years, through a succession of species, our brains grew in size from the 300 cubic centimeters of Ardipithecus to the 1400 cubic centimeters of the modern human brain. As the brain increased in size, we also find an associated increase in intelligence, until we see the beginnings of culture and eventually what appears to be religion. In this presentation, we will briefly look at the different members of the Homo genus and what we can determine about their religiousness. Homo habilis lived between 2.3 and 1.6 million years ago, with a brain only half the size of our own. Habilis, which is Latin for skillful, is considered the first member of the Homo genus because they were the first to create and use tools. It is the earliest indication we have of human-like culture, but there is no evidence they practice anything like religion. Homo erectus lived between 1.8 million to 300,000 years ago. His brain had grown to 1,000 cubic centimeters in size, and his activities reveal greater intelligence. The tools were more sophisticated, they used fire. Erectus also shows evidence of being concerned about things that transcend biological needs. In other words, Erectus engaged in activities not directly related to survival and that seemed to have solely symbolic value. Specifically, Erectus appear to have painted themselves. Red ochre stones are found at their campsites that have been scratched to make a powder. That red powder was then mixed with water or fat and used as body paint. As the picture shows, some tribes in Africa still use red ochre for that purpose. While not necessarily religious, it is the first sign of symbolic thinking, which is a necessity for the existence of religion. Homo heidelbergensis lived 700,000 to 200,000 years ago, with a brain size of 1,200 cubic centimeters. The object being held is a heidelbergensis axe made from red stone. It is about 350,000 years old and was found at the bottom of a cave, along with the skeletons of 27 heidelbergensis people. Axes made from red stone are very rare. Dating back to Erectus, the color red appears to have had symbolic meaning. So it is conjectured the axe was left with the corpses as a memento or funerary object. If so, this would be the earliest indication of some kind of deliberate burial practice, which may also indicate some kind of religious belief. Now, the Neanderthals lived from 300,000 to around 25,000 years ago. Their brains were up to 1,700 cubic centimeters on average, which is larger than modern humans. Unlike the stereotype, they were intelligent, built shelters, controlled fire, and show sophisticated social interaction. They purposely buried their dead with some form of ceremony. and from studying their skeletons it appears they cared for the disabled, weak, and elderly members of their clans. This is evidence of both religious beliefs and a moral code. Neanderthal burial sites reveal corpses that have been laid out in the grave rather than simply dumped in a hole. Sometimes they are in a fetal position. Implements and possessions are placed around them. Some skeletons are covered in red dye, meaning red dye or powder covered the corpse and then fell onto the bones as the flesh decayed. The presence of large quantities of flower spores also indicates some corpses were covered in flowers. All of that is evidence of burial rituals, beliefs about death, and maybe an afterlife. Neanderthal skeletons unearthed from burial sites also provide evidence for how difficult life could be. One man had a useless arm and a crushed eye socket, which would have left him blind, but neither injury appears to be what caused his death. The evidence indicates injured or disabled Neanderthals were kept alive by other members of the clan. In a time when life was precarious, this is a strong indication of compassion and some kind of underlying moral code that justified keeping people alive who did not contribute to the clan's survival. Moral codes, of course, are also a common component of religious practice. Which brings us to ourselves, otherwise known as Homo sapiens or modern humans. Homo sapiens evolved into existence about 200,000 years ago with a brain size of 1,400 cubic centimeters. From the beginning, humans have had a complex culture, sophisticated tools, and at this point appear to be the first species to produce artwork. This artwork, found in cave paintings and other objects that are discovered at their campsites, also provides evidence of their religious practices. There are over 100 known caves with painted walls in Europe, dating back as early as 32,000 BC. The chambers with paintings are often deep inside the cave, frequently high up on the walls, requiring climbing and perching on ledges, all of this done with torchlight in what is otherwise total darkness. If the purpose was simply to paint pictures, these rooms are not what you would choose. The difficulties involved make it likely that these paintings served more important purposes and are most likely religious in nature. The caves were probably sacred spaces, and these pictures had sacred functions. It was not unusual for people to leave handprints behind. We believe the handprints were a way to connect themselves with the sacred power in the cave. This is a picture of a horse being hunted. Horses were a frequent part of their diet, judging from the number of horse bones at their campsites. You can see what appear to be arrows. It is believed these hunting pictures were a form of sympathetic magic. Early religion probably possessed a strong magical element. There are numerous pictures of what appear to be shaman. This shaman is dressed in a costume made from different parts of animals they hunted: reindeer antlers, bear paws, a horse's tail. The prominent penis makes it obvious that it is a man. This amazing picture was found on a large stalactite hanging from the roof of the cave in its deepest chamber. The dark triangle is a woman's vagina with pubic hair. You can see the vaginal slit that has been cut into the representation with a stylus. On either side of the pubic triangle are two legs. Above the vagina is what is believed to be a picture of a man in a bison head mounting the female. Fertility appears to have been a significant concern in some of the earliest religious practices. In one cave were found what appear to be altars with the skull of a cave bear on top. Other cave bear skulls were found around the stone. In a different cave bear skulls were set in niches cut into the walls of an inner chamber. It appears another characteristic of prehistoric religions was a concern about connection to sacred power. The evidence demonstrates a variety of religious practices among the earliest humans, but also shows that religion did not begin with Homo sapiens. Instead, modern humans inherited religion as part of their evolutionary and cultural heritage, and developed them into the complex system of beliefs and practices that we find today.